John, when we were planning for the webinar, of course, we have years of experience. We've done a lot of these implementations and worked with a lot of different manufacturers to get their data syndicated on the network for GDSN. But we wanted to obviously start by sharing what is GDSN, quick history and high points that I know you definitely wanted to share with the group today.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Amitra. Thank you, Amplify team, for having me on the webinar today. And hello, folks. Excited to talk about GDSN today. For those of you both familiar and unfamiliar, I'd like to start with a brief history, talk about the GDSN, where it started, and most importantly, how it's evolved to fit in today's world, and what we're seeing across the commerce landscape with suppliers and where the GDSN is fitting in. So the GDSN, it's a technology standard. It's been in use for roughly 15 years. It's traditionally used to connect trading partners, sending and receiving content, the content necessary to fuel the global supply chain. It's been most heavily adopted in categories and industries like fast-moving consumer goods, grocery retail, food service, hard lines, things like that. So typically areas where suppliers have goods on many shelves and recipients have many suppliers that they receive items for. So, the GDSN itself, what it is it's a network of interoperable data pools that all agree to communicate on a shared standard. So same set of pipes, same schema, same attributes. And this ensures that participating trading partners have a secure, timely, and accurate means to send and receive content. So, it helps drive efficiencies in warehouse delivery and receipt, inventory demand planning. That's just to name a few, right? So from the early 2000s to the 2010s, into the 2010s, the technology was great. It was heavily adopted. It was just what everyone needed. And that was true until around the time where every consumer on the planet, for the most part, swapped that brick cell phone with buttons on it in their purse or pocket for a portable touchscreen supercomputer, the iPhones, the Androids. So what we saw from that was a growing trend in online commerce, right? So as consumers shifted from shopping and purchasing in store to shopping and purchasing online or wherever they are, or some crazy hybrid of the two, right? Like BOPIS. Retailers had a new place that they needed to meet their consumer on the product detail page, that lives on the digital aisle on their online marketplace. And in reaction to this, suppliers started to see demands from their trading partners for consumer-facing content, which was, previously relegated to just the physical package and television advertising. So what we saw there was that the GDSN data providers were either too slow to meet that challenge to help their brand supply consumer-facing content, or they chose an alternative strategy, right? And that was building technologies outside of the GDSN to support consumer-facing data for their recipients, and they charge for it. So this led to a great fragmentation. So not great as in a positive, but like a vast fragmentation. GDSN data pool providers became entrenched in their specialized market, industry, or with their set of retailers that they have exclusive relationships with. E-commerce teams, digital teams, marketing teams were born, started owning content, hunted for technologies to support their needs. By the way, this is the original opportunity Salsify launched from. And master data supply and IT teams continue to own the physical supply chain, which fuels GDSN. So now we're all starting to kind of feel the pain of these physical and digital worlds colliding, right? And it's a pain directly caused by the operational and functional silos within your organizations. So retailers like Amazon, Walmart, they're early movers in consolidating their category and merchant buying teams for in-store and online into one unified front, as well as their physical and digital supply chain functions all into one functional unit. Right, so more and more we're seeing requests to master data teams to supply consumer-facing content through the GDSN. And on the other end, we're seeing more and more requests to the digital teams owning online marketplace content submission to supply information about physical shipping configurations. But the silos we've built in response to the old ways of working are preventing our customers and brands like yourself from responding to these seismic shifts in content submission. Right, so in order to win today, this is wrapping up here. In order to win today in this world of commerce, supply chain teams, digital marketing teams, you need to be nimble to evolving requests and demands from your retailers, no matter which way they are requesting it. You need to break down the silos that separate your functional units, right? And you also have to have technology to fuel that change in process, cross-functional collaboration, and content necessary to win on the digital shelf. So that's why we built a native GS1 certified GDSN data pool. We fully integrated it with Salsify's core platform, and our key focus has been on simplicity, visibility, and actionability, right? Our drive has been, and will continue to be, to make the GDSN solution approachable to the business user, and also a breath of fresh air to the GDSN expert who's been using other tools to date. So that, I might have gone on too long, but it's a little bit of a history. It's a little bit of how we've evolved, and why we've built a data pool and integrated with our platform.
No, that's all really good information. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that. That was awesome. A couple of things that I do want to pull out of what John just talked about, right? Obviously, calling out the different personnel within your organization that really needs to be involved to support a GDSN solution, at least an efficient one that you're going to gain benefits from, just leans itself obviously to our mantra with implementations, right? Is that there are elements, people, processes, and technology that are going to make a successful solution. So of course, we're going to cover the technology piece a little later in our webinar, but I think the people and processes elements that we encounter during the implementations are some of the challenges that I do want to walk through with the JP, right? To really understand, once we're boots on the ground with our services, what are we encountering that may be potential blockers, right? Because obviously the urgency at which we encounter some of our engagements that need to get their items out to their trading partners, right? Get the correct data out there, launch those new products. It tends to be extremely important. So when we get into an implementation and we're running up against things that may not have been flagged early, or that we need to educate the customer on, we definitely want to treat those as lessons learned and share those with the group. So I do want to pose a question to you, JP, around your experience with implementations, right? Maybe we can start specifically around some of the process changes that we encounter when we're rolling out new GDSN solutions. Do you have a few that maybe you could share with the audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me on. I'm excited to talk about GDSN today. And so, hello, everyone. But no, what I want to talk about for the kind of the challenges that I've faced while working on projects involve GDSN is kind of like Mitra referenced, or reference to, is the readiness of the customer, right? A lot of customers would have the not all levels of the packaging hierarchy set up. And what I mean by that is that if a customer comes into a project and they have their eaches set up, right, that can be a blocker for GDSN success and publishes, because you need those next level, because it may not be a trade item, right? And so what that means is that there can be a blocker that for within the GDSN pool upon publication, or for actually syndicating with the retailer through GDSN. Another one is simply just the readiness around your GLNs, right? What GLN are you going to be what's the GLN of the retailer that you're going to be syndicating to the GDSN? Another one is, not just the retailers of the GLNs of the retailers, but your actual own GLN. I know that for most people that is a known thing. You'll know your own GLN, but just to be, when you're kind of net new to GDSN, to ensure that you know what your GLN is, that is pretty important, because if you have the wrong GLN, that can be a blocker on that. And I've experienced that with a couple clients. And then another one is not knowing what attributes are needed for the retailer. And I know that can be one that we work through with you, as a solution consultant. I would, ensure that we get that data, as we're going through the publishing process. But a lot of the times, if you don't know, certain attributes, what are the dimensions of the packaging, things of that nature, just being ready from a attribution standpoint, right? And that can be a blocker if you're not, perfectly in sync with what is needed. And even though you may have all the G10s set up and you're ready to go with the GLNs, if you don't have the appropriate attributions, that can be a delay in the setup. But your success would still come. It just would be a delay in the process. We want you to be as quick as possible, as many of these retailers are. They want their data as quickly as possible. So when we don't want any delays, and those are a few challenges that I've faced. And again, Salsify, through all of the feedback and everything that I'll show you within the tool, really kind of helps work through all those challenges you face. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it for like the ones that I've faced. Amitra, I'm sure you've kind of faced similar ones as well, or
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you did say, JP, there that I wanted to kind of tie back to the intro that we got from John is around the resources that we work with on these actual engagements, right? So a lot of the times, if we are working with some folks that are further downstream, so we're talking about the e-commerce and the digital teams, they might not be privy to or have insight into the upfront work that goes into building out an actual packaging hierarchy, right? I do think at times having the right people engaged on these implementations is obviously critical. So to JP's point, if we've established your use for the Salsify platform to utilize G10s, and we have those consumer facing eaches, to his point, only in the system, and we of course get to the point where we need to have the cases, right, for that each. We need to know about the pallet information and all of that logistics data. That's when those silos, to John's point, can obviously become an issue, right? Whereas we're pushing forward to get all of that information centralized in a tool like Salsify, we do need to pull in those other groups so we can get a big picture understanding of what it really means to utilize GDSN to get all of your data out there on the network. So that was definitely one thing, JP, when you said that stood out to me. Another thing was specific around the requirements for each of the trading partners. I don't think we can underestimate some of the expectations of the bigger retailers if we're thinking about the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the Walmarts, of course. And sure, there's going to be that core and global data, but there are probably going to be some nuances and slight differences for each of those retailers. And speaking from experience similar to you, JP, I do learn that having that conversation early and upfront with the customer project resources around, have we actually gotten the requirements per the retailer, right? So what are they saying for their trading partners needs to be done to get their data properly published and for them to receive that information. So I do think those are all critical elements. Of course, I would be amiss if I didn't point out the need to nurture those relationships as well, right? Because a lot of those conversations are happening before they're engaged with myself or a JP, right? Or even maybe making a decision on what tool they want to utilize for their GDSN solution. A lot of it is going to be planning and making that transition and making sure that you have all the information up front. So to JP's point, when you are actually ready to publish and there's an expectation that the recipient of that product information gets it in a timely manner, we don't want to have any issues or red flags there. But I did, of course, want to pause there. And obviously, John, JP and I have shared a couple of thoughts, but I definitely wanted to get your insight. I know you're working closely with customers fairly early on when they get into their decision-making process to go down this path, right, for a new GDSN solution with Salsify. Did you have any thoughts that you commonly come across as far as potential challenges?
Yeah, I think you both have touched on a lot of what I've seen. If I could kind of put a wrapper around it all, right? There's this high level, this is not just a data project, right? This is about change management. So it's about working internally to get all of your stakeholders that touch content together and engaged and involved early, right? Even before if you're switching GDSN solution providers, even before you decide to make the switch, right? You should get everybody involved up to speed. And that's both from the leaders all the way down to the practitioners on both ends. Having a realistic grasp on the current quality of your data is important, and how that relates to, the trading partner needs, right? Because every trading partner, there's core content in the GDSN, 80% of it is all the same, and it's all, all the retailers want it. But the GDSN schema is vast, right? It is thousands of attributes wide. And each retailer has their set of, core attributes and then some differentiated attributes that they want. So really having an understanding of what your retailers want up front and how your data meets that quality expectation that the retailer might have, or the recipient, or the distributor, whatever you might call them. And then as we start to step down through the funnel, right, there's the making sure that everyone that we've gathered together, a stakeholder in this project, is at least familiar with the language, right? The GTINs, the packaging hierarchies. What is GDSN actually doing for your business, right? It's fueling the supply chain revenue, like the physical supply chain revenue, right? GDSN is the backbone to, e-commerce is growing, but it's still 80 to 90% of your bottom line. So, getting everyone up to speed with what the GDSN is, the business impact it has, and the language around it, right? Company identifiers, packaging hierarchies, what GTINs are called, and how they stack together. I think that's all critical, right? You need to work down through the process. You need to get everyone involved. You need to align on what your retailers need, where you stand against that, and then start to align everybody on the language. And then you can start to work with and amplify to build out what that actual migration project and implementation project looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, obviously, a lot of things to make sure are in line, to John's point, prior to engaging for an implementation, right, and services.